everything, the Weather Authority is keeping you prepared.
The latest update did come in from the National Hurricane Center. Helene moving north-northeast. Winds have increased up to 90 miles per hour.
Keeping you informed.
It's now 170 miles northwest of us, and as we had mentioned, this is a major Cat 4 hurricane. This is going to have major landfall implications.
Southwest Florida has seen its fair share of storms in the past few years.
We are leaving immediately after this because it is not safe. You're starting to see some of these debris, sticks flying up and out, and it's one of the reasons why Sanibel is evacuated. It clearly is not safe out here.
But our slice of paradise has bounced back in ways we'd never expected.
It's tough.
We had each other, and that's a good thing.
I wouldn't have made it without Marianne. We're going to make it, though. We're going to make it.
Wink News has been there with you every step of the way. That won't change.
Yes, we avoid the worst part of the storm, but the wind field's growing and the pressures are deepening. We're going to feel more of that influence on the back end with the surge.
From forecast cones to safety tips, the Weather Authority team has you covered. You're watching Wink Tracks the Tropics.
All right, welcome in and happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's edition of Wink Tracks the Tropics. I hope you had a lovely start to your morning out there. More sunshine, more blue skies across sunny Southwest Florida. Beautiful weather here locally over the past several days. And we'll kind of delve into it, see what we have on tap over the next few days, talk a little bit about drought, because that obviously is a big issue when it comes to the dry season down here. So we'll kind of see where we're stacked up right now, where we should be in terms of our normal rainfall, all that good stuff. In addition to that, yes, it's in the name, tracking the tropics. I'll tell you what, folks, I love it. Things are still nice and quiet out there. I'll show you the latest runs and all of those different ensemble members and kind of what we're looking at, if there's any areas of interest out there that we're keeping our eyes on down the road. And we'll look at some of the latest updates from our friends at the National Hurricane Center as well. In addition to that, if you tuned in yesterday, remember each and every day this week we're going to talk about a different aspect of landfalling tropical systems and how they can impact us here, including closer to home as well. Yesterday we talked about storm surge, and today we're going to talk all about wind, kind of the biggest thing that people associate with tropical systems. Lucky for me, I have a wonderful panel on tap today. Good morning, meteorologists Lauren Kreidler, Zach Malak. How are we doing?
Good morning. So good. How are you?
I'm doing great. If you can't tell, happy out there.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Well, hey, you know, I do want to start off with the tropics out there, and every single day until we get to November 30th, you know what I'm going to start off with, that countdown clock. Let's pop it up. How many days left do we have? Drum roll. 12.
Ooh.
I don't know what that Christmas song is. 12 something something.
Zach knows it.
I do not.
Well, we'll have to learn it because we can do it each and every day from here on out.
He's
Because
just
I think
warm
there's
up a little
12.
bit.
Now you got the 5 gold rings in there.
Lauren's going to be the 12, what? The 12 winds whipping? Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that.
Very good. We could put our own tropical twist on it. Nonetheless, if you can tell by the tone of our voices, we love this, right? Because things are winding down. They're winding down on a quiet note as well. The 2025 Atlantic hurricane season comes to a close officially at the end of this month on November 30th. So let's see what's going on out there right now. Absolutely nothing.
Nice.
Look how quiet it is, right? This is our favorite graphic that we have out of the thousands of graphics that the Weather Authority holds.
Thousands.
No development over the next 7 days.
Tens of thousands,
is
Josh.
Expected.
Tens of thousands.
There is a lot of them out there, and this is still my favorite. So this comes to us from our friends at the National Hurricane Center. They are not expecting any new development for at least the next week. And remember, we also get another outlook that looks even further than that. Our friends at the Climate Prediction Center, they put together an outlook that extends 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Now, it only comes out once a week versus that National Hurricane Center update, which actually comes out like 4 times a day.
Is that it?
Yeah, exactly, right? No.
Awesome.
Lauren, this graphic is not broken.
No, I thought it was.
That's the beautiful part about it.
I love that.
Absolutely no areas to watch across the Gulf, Atlantic, and Caribbean.
Amazing.
And this extends from November 19th, which is tomorrow, all the way through December 2nd, taking us through the tail end of hurricane season. Now, tomorrow, actually today, they're going to release an updated look at this, looking ahead towards the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll be kind of advanced a week into the future. That'll bring us through around probably December 10th-ish. So that comes out this afternoon. So make sure you tune back in tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, and you'll be the first to see it here with us on Wink Tracks the Tropics. And, you know, the plan is for the graphic to look exactly the same, just
Yes.
based on kind of what we're seeing long range in some of the computer models, right? I love to show these ensemble members because it paints the picture of an entire computer model and not just one deterministic run of it. This is showing us where areas of low pressure could be located. Now remember, there's dozens of these ensemble members. The one spot that we've been watching over the past few weeks that's shown on again, off again signs is going to be deep, deep southern Caribbean, all right? Pretty much near South America there, as some of those areas of low pressure want to kind of develop down there and then move off into the Pacific. You can see a couple of the ensemble members try to spit out some very weak area of low pressure, which again is likely just not going to happen because there's not good agreement between all of those different ensemble members. This is the European model, so very good stuff from that. And hey, even better, look at this. No, I didn't forget to turn it on for this one either. This is the Google AI ensemble members. This one actually extends all the way through December 1st. That is the end of this model run, and none of the Google AI ensemble members are picking up the chance for even a little area of low pressure
Love to see that.
develop. Yeah, that's really good stuff right there. So, you know, I want to show you this graphic and then try to pull in the panel here and just kind of see how we want to, you know, think about things over the next couple of weeks. Very quiet hurricane season for the United States, right? It's all about perspective. Our friends in the Caribbean obviously got dealt a really bad blow there in western Jamaica. Bermuda had a landfalling system as well. We did have a tropical storm earlier this season that went on and impacted the Carolinas. But, you know, here's a little fact for you. No Gulf hurricanes or United States hurricane landfalls for the first time in 10 years. The last time that happened was 2015. Is this going to be the case as we close out hurricane season? That's the question to you guys.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, season in terms of calendar date, not closed out. In terms of activity dates, closed out.
Yep.
Been closed out since late October. I said this last week, I think a couple weeks ago. All signs show the season has officially wrapped up in terms of the season, in terms of actually trying to develop tropical systems. The Gulf, the Caribbean, the Atlantic has flipped into a wintertime pattern and is no longer conducive to produce these additional systems in the 12 days we have left. So yes, those frogs are a-leaping, the maids are a-milking, and all the other good stuff in the 12 days of Christmas is working out just fine.
Incredible.
And now, speaking of the holidays, you know, the season officially ends on the 30th. I think a question that arises is, can you see storms develop outside of hurricane season? The answer is yes, but it is very rare. This is a great graphic. I've showed it a couple times before, but I wanted to remind you, these are the December storms on record, not just hurricanes, also tropical depressions, tropical storms, since 1850. So what was that? 175 years of data right here.
Good math.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, I got a minor in it. It's pretty cool. So you notice that a bulk of the activity, if there has been anything to develop in the month of December, primarily kind of spins up there in the middle of the Atlantic and stays out there. All right, a very big rarity. There's only been one landfalling tropical system in the month of December in the United States. And wouldn't you know it? Right in our backyard. Right there. Look at that. 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm made landfall in Bonita Beach 100 years ago.
100 years
Almost 100 years ago to the day.
December
So think about
1st,
it.
okay.
You know,
13 days away.
exactly. You know, the fact that how rare it is, and the fact that it was just the day after, you know, the official end of hurricane season. So it just goes to show, the deeper you go into the winter months, I mean, the less and less likely it becomes. Right. So this was pretty much right on the cusp there. But again, I find that very interesting that the one system to make landfall was right here in Southwest Florida. So good news is that's not happening this time around. We can see all of those models through December 1st, and there's just no hints of absolutely anything out there. So very good to see that. And here's just, again, a quick recap of what we've seen so far throughout the season. 13 named storms, 5 of which have become hurricanes, 4 of which have become major hurricanes, which is a fairly large chunk of the actual hurricanes, right? So most of them went on to rapidly intensify, really take advantage of those favorable conditions, including low wind shear and very warm ocean waters. You had 3 Cat 5s in Aaron, Umberto, and of course Melissa. That's the one that made landfall in western Jamaica as tied as the strongest landfalling hurricane in the Atlantic basin. So
Yeah.
the next name on the list, go ahead, Zach.
I was going to say, I'm sure the people in Olga down the road near Alva were, looking forward to getting a storm named after their community.
I don't know.
Olga Mall. It's a great little spot. There's a lot going on in Olga. It's some great home cooking restaurants out there. If you've never been, just letting you know, there's a lot of just deep home cooking restaurants in Olga, 2 or 3.
Sounds like a team field trip.
I know. I guess we got to, let's go. Maybe not yet.
These names, they are on a rotating list every 6 years. So if you are in Olga and you are watching, then hey.
We'll get this list in
7 years?
Yeah, it's 7 years. So yeah, and we'll get it in 2032. 2032. There's 6 full lists, so you get 6 full lists. So that this list will repeat itself in 2032. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That does make sense right there. So hey, that's the next chance. Hopefully that time around, we can have even less names on the list that time. And when you think about names that get taken off the list, sometimes these names get retired, right? So you look at the list for this year, obviously one stands out, which is going to get retired, which will be Hurricane Melissa, because of the devastation that occurred, especially there in western Jamaica and also other portions of the Caribbean. So there will be a different name that starts with the letter M added to that list when it comes around again in 2032. So, like I mentioned earlier, yesterday we focused on storm surge, one of the, if not the most impactful parts of a landfalling hurricane, especially here in Southwest Florida. But I think the one thing that people associate the most with these landfalling systems is going to be the winds. I mean, that's how we created an entire scale about them. That's what causes, a lot of the damage out there as well. Zach, you're going to tell us a little bit, how we kind of categorize these storms and also kind of how wind has made an impact here in Southwest Florida and, all about wind. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, in terms of, wind, Josh, I'm glad you brought this point up. It's amazing how storm surge is still theoretically almost still so new. When you think about it, obviously physically storm surge has accompanied every single hurricane that has ever developed in the world before we were here, and will continue to be evolving even after we are here. But in terms of actually tracking storm surge, 2017 was the first year that we had storm surge watches and warnings. So when I say relatively new on a theoretical level, we really began to know a lot more about what storm surge does, what it really is, and why you have to evacuate for storm surge. But prior to that, even though storm surge always was obviously a thing with hurricanes, wind was always the main driving force that caused people to worry about storms. That's why the Saffir-Simpson scale was derived many years ago to help understand the strength of hurricanes, similar to the Fujita scale with tornadoes, the enhanced Fujita scale for updating the wind threshold for those tornadoes. Same thing on a wind scale for hurricanes. So yes, you have that typical wind scale, category 1 to 5. Anything below 74 miles per hour is a tropical storm. So we always track that from 39 miles per hour to 73 miles per hour. Once you hit 74, it's a category 1 storm. And then it goes all the way up to category 5, where it's 157 plus. Quick sentiment on that real quick is that a couple years ago, a lot of people were saying, hey, why isn't there a category 6? Why doesn't a category 6 develop? And a lot of it is just based primarily on that it's very rare to have winds to try and create that threshold of a category 6. And even if they tried to create that threshold, I think only 2 or 3 typhoons in the Pacific would have met the criteria of a possible category 6. No exact hurricanes in the Atlantic would have crossed that threshold. So just an important thing to mention there, but the wind's always a driving factor. Obviously the wind impactful when we had Andrew cross the state in 1992. We had Wilma pass over Collier County, where it's primarily a wind event because the surge would have been far towards the south, the far southern tip, south of Homestead even, eastern part of the Florida Keys, really from Marathon to the northeast. So that storm surge threat wasn't really an indicator as well, which goes to show The wind was always the biggest impact just because we got so lucky with not having as much of a storm surge when our population was increasing in the early 2000s. Fast forward, you go to Irma, and Irma made landfall, limited the storm surge threat for the rest of Southwest Florida besides Everglades City. But obviously, we had the wind indicator making landfall, Florida Keys as a Category 4 storm, Marco Island, Cape Romano as a Category 3 hurricane, weakened to Category 2 in Lee County, and then went out towards Tampa after that. So wind's always a huge indicator. You can tell by this graphic, speaking of Irma, when Irma made landfall towards the south, I mean, that was a 180 mile per hour hurricane when it was actually a Category 5 east of Puerto Rico. It did weaken quite a bit once it was moving towards Cuba, moving towards the Keys, and moving towards Southwest Florida. But we do help indicate strength of hurricanes based on wind and wind alone, just because it is a direct correlation of pressure and it's easier to track, easier to understand. We don't code hurricanes based on the damage of the storm surge, just because most of these hurricanes, just like Imelda, just like many of them that stayed out in the Atlantic, they didn't create any storm surge that caused any impact. Of course, there was rising water. Of course, there was high waves. And of course, there was storm surge in a sense. But because there was no land, you don't have a factor to track there. So that's why we focus in on the wind specifically, just because it always is a function indicator of every single hurricane that could be tracked and compared to every other hurricane that's ever been, was, and will form in the future. So that's kind of the reason why we do break down the wind so closely. Speaking of wind, I mean, we had strong wind gusts in Irma. We had strong wind gusts in Ian. You can see on your screen right now, we had an extremely high wind gusts across parts of Southwest Florida during Ian. Even though Ian was making landfall across Lee County, sensors are getting blown out, that the wind speeds were even higher. The gusts were recorded even higher during Irma, which is hard to believe. And I think that's primarily based on sensors, sensor failure, location of the storm's landfall, and where we had sensors at. So kind of an important metric there. It's not only what we get the data from, it's always where the data is coming from in terms of how many sensors are in the area upon landfall.
And I find the wind gusts interesting, right? Because when we talk about the sustained winds, it's a big difference compared to the wind gusts. Sustained winds are a 2 minute. Right? Yeah, 2 minutes of you have to have that wind at a consistent pace. A wind gust, what is it, about
10-second burst of wind or less. Yeah. 10-second burst of wind, and that's the average of that 10 seconds. And yes, and within the hurricanes, it's amazing how those gusts are the gusts that create the biggest problems.
Yeah,
yes.
That's the big problem causers right there. When you get those gusts, that's what all of a sudden will tear something down very quickly, because it's not like you're seeing those sustained winds and everything is just coming off all at the same time.
Right.
It's when you get those bigger gusts of wind. And Lauren, you've actually been out in a few of these storms, right?
I mean, it comes to mind Hurricane Helene in particular. When we were out on Fort Myers Beach, we were doing some coverage there, and it wasn't until, the winds were consistently strong, don't get me wrong, but it was those wind gusts that we'd feel every now and then, and as the storm made its closer approach, they would get, of course, stronger and more frequent, and that's what made the difference. That's when we saw those palm fronds flying off. That's when we saw, we actually saw some power lines coming down, so it's those wind gusts. It's not even sustained winds obviously, of course, do damage as well, but the wind gusts were the most notable part of that system.
And recall Helene, I mean, it stayed very, very far offshore, so we barely even got, what that system was even doing. It was rapidly strengthening as it was moving away from Southwest Florida and heading towards the Big Bend region. So Helene is a storm that was primarily a storm surge indicator, storm surge storm versus a windstorm, just because of how far the core of that system was offshore of Southwest Florida's coast.
And that's a good reminder that even though it was that far off, still feeling those wind gusts, still feeling those winds as it was pushing its way past us. So,
and a big reason why is because of how large the wind field was. And we're actually going to show you that here in just a second. It's kind of interesting, the sizes. Before that, I did want to pop up another graphic here, just kind of showing, I believe this are the sustained winds of the storm as it moved on shore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So those are kind of, showing the strength of systems that have impacted us directly. Ian and Charlie, obviously there with sustained winds of 150 miles per hour. And again, like we just talked about, that was sustained, right? So the hurricane hunters go up, they take their samples. There's a little bit of a calculation that's done. It takes it from those flight level winds down to a little bit lower. So that's kind of where they take those higher winds that they find up there because there's less friction. You take it a little bit closer to the surface, and that's how they kind of get these numbers.
I think most of these sustained winds, too, are actually from some of those sensors as well, just because the hurricane hunters weren't necessarily flying, obviously 1873, 1948, not even 1960.
Right.
So, these are sensor-indicated sustained winds, basically that 2-minute average of the winds. It is an average over 2 minutes. There's some that are higher, some that are lower. Obviously, you're taking out the 10-second bursts of wind, those gusts from that data, and that's kind of how you average those sustained winds. So when you think of the sustained wind element, that's a constant force on the roofs, or on the buildings, or on the palm trees, or on the power lines. And then within those, within that constant force of the wind, then you get those gusts that are 30, 40, 50, 60, if not even 70 miles per hour higher than that. Wrap in a few, weaker tornadoes spinning through it, and that's why you have so much damage that creates a cacophony of stuff across an area that gets impacted by these hurricanes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last point that we wanted to make here was a little bit about Windfield, right? Because we always talk about how storms are never built the same, right?
Nope.
Although they may have the same sustained winds, right? We just saw that with Charlie and Ian. But look at the difference in the size of the wind field, right? The red color that you see that indicates the wind field of the hurricane force sustained winds, while those yellow colors indicate the size of the tropical storm force winds. And it just goes to show that every storm is built different. Charlie was a quick-moving storm, and it had a smaller wind field, although the middle of that wind field was extremely damaging and powerful. Ian was a little bit larger. Irma there in 2017. Zach,
Wilma.
you can, well, look at Wilma too. Exactly.
Wow.
I mean, Lauren and I went through Wilma on Florida's East Coast, right? Think about that. It originally made a landfall down here. It kind of had that little bit of a northeasterly component in its movement, made its way across the rest of South Florida, then back out.
Had like 4 weeks off of school with that one.
Yeah, I actually had family in Naples during Wilma, and I remember just hearing the name. So I don't remember how young I was, but I remember just hearing the name, so on and so forth, going on and on and on about Wilma. And not really knowing what it was until years and years later. But it is crazy. But it's also it's one thing to point out that the storms do change size, also based on what they were historically before. I'm going to bring up that point just for a quick second. Wilma was a Category 5 hurricane, obviously the strongest Category 5 ever in the Atlantic Basin, south and southwest of Cuba, and it was at its strongest point before it reached southwest Florida. So as it was strong, it was tinier. Once the storm weakens, it begins to unravel and that wind field expands. So that's why Wilma is quite massive. Irma, same thing. Irma was a Category 5 storm, extremely strong storm east of Puerto Rico, moving towards Puerto Rico, passing north of it, obviously heading towards Cuba, passing just north of it, bouncing off Cuba's coast, weakening from a Category 5 to a 4 to a 3. Then re-strengthening to a 4 before it made landfall on Key West, and then weakening back to a 3 when it made landfall in southwest Florida. But again, because of that difference, think of that ice skater effect. The ice skater spins faster when the arms are together, spins slower when the arms are out. Same phenomena of hurricanes, that when the hurricanes are the strongest, they are tighter. The winds are tighter towards the center of the storm, and then when the storm gets weaker, the winds begin to unravel, the wind field gets larger. Case in point, difference of Charlie and Ian. Charlie and Ian were at their strongest points when they were approaching southwest Florida's coast. Charlie was rapidly strengthening. It was very tiny because it was rapidly strengthening, already a tiny storm, already fast moving, but it didn't strengthen and then weaken to create that unraveling of the wind field. Same thing for Ian. Ian was massive for what it was, but it was also rapidly strengthening on its approach. It was at its strongest point at landfall, which kind of helps decipher exactly some of that difference in why is Wilma, why is Irma massive compared to Ian and compared to Charlie. It is directly correlated to what was the storm before, is it strengthening or is it unraveling? And there are different types of lifestyles based on that within the lifestyle of, between the life cycle, I should say, of a hurricane.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's just interesting to note that, you have different factors like the speed of a storm and also the size of the wind field that can completely kind of change the impacts on an area, right? Especially when it comes to storm surge, right? Speed and size of the wind field will definitely make a difference there. So yeah, a lot of interesting points, so I appreciate you guys for kind of touching on that. I think we'll go ahead and move on. I do want to touch real quick before we head out here, a little bit localized. I think the big story has been the lack of rainfall and the lack of that we will continue to see for at least the next 7 days. Look at that little 10% chance on Sunday, right? Let me show you what that's all about. High pressure's been in place across the southeast. It's going to continue to dominate over the next couple of days. That keeps us dry, keeps that warmer air in place as well. There is a very weak front that's going to want to try to push in. This is likely going to be occurring this weekend. You notice all of the dry air aloft still staying in place across southwest Florida, whereas a little bit further north of the Panhandle, you can see some of that green, a little bit more moisture. With the front, it provides the lift. You need two ingredients for rain, pretty much. You need lift, you need moisture. That front is a lifting mechanism. You get a little bit of moisture out ahead of it, you'll see a few showers. But here's the thing, by the time it gets here, a lot of that moisture is going to want to dissipate. And we're going to be stuck with dry air as that front moves through. It's going to be very weak. So not only is it not going to really make us much colder, it's likely not going to produce any measurable rainfall for us either. Speaking of, it's been quite a while, a little bit over 3 weeks now for Naples and Fort Myers since we have seen any of that measurable rainfall, 19 days in Punta Gorda. So yeah, big donut on the month so far across southwest Florida. Haven't seen any of that measurable rainfall. And on the year, pretty big deficits. Look at that. About 1.5 feet about there for Fort Myers. That's how much we're down for what we should be. About 1 foot down in Punta Gorda, 7 inches less than what we typically are by this time of year in Naples. What do you guys think about this? What do we got going on?
Could use some rain,
Yeah, we could.
but it's not coming.
Welcome to the dry season, right?
Yeah.
And
The
you know,
dry season has definitely added on to what it's known for. It came in like a lion, really. I mean, it just got here, and we haven't had rain since. We don't have much measurable rain coming our way anytime soon. Indicators are we should get some stronger fronts in December and January that hopefully can be some rainmakers for us.
Right.
We tend to get some of those rainmakers out of some of those fronts sometimes too. So just something that we still can get rain in the dry season. We just haven't as of yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Make a good point there. You know, the dry season doesn't mean it's completely bone dry the whole time. It just means that the way we get rain kind of changes because we don't have that same sea breeze driven pattern that we do in the rainy season during the summer when you have the ingredients that come together to kind of produce almost a daily rainfall, not everywhere, but in some spots. That cuts off during the dry season and we have to get it from other ways. Now, a lot of folks are looking ahead towards next week, right? Turkey Day on Thursday, Thanksgiving heading our way. Everyone wants to know, is it going to be warm? Is it going to be cold? There's a lot of stuff floating around on social media too, right? You see half of people talk about how it's going to be super hot, and then the other half talk about how it's going to be kind of cold. So I wanted to touch on that real quick. I'm looking for a majority of next week, and this outlook does a good job of kind of picturing that. The eastern half of the country is going to be, for the most part, slightly above average, at least. Probably a little bit more so, especially across the deep south. I think our temperatures will be maybe a degree or two warmer than what they typically are. Nothing too bad out there. But overall, no, it's not going to be cold here on Thanksgiving. And it's not going to be colder than average across, again, a big chunk of the country, including up to the Midwest. But just after Thanksgiving, pretty much like the day or two after, there is looking to be a pretty good shot of cold air that'll be moving across the country. I think a lot of spots will end up being below average a little bit after Thanksgiving. I think the question is for us here in Southwest Florida, is that cold air really going to make it down here? Doesn't look to be anything near as impactful as what that past cold front was last week. Guys, you guys have probably been kind of looking at some of those models. What are your thoughts here? I know we're really spitballing because we're a little bit far away, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, anything to lower that humidity, have it be a little bit drier again. I mean, anytime we get that reinforcement, even if those temperatures don't lower, it feels good. And we'll be kicking off the month of December, of course, shortly after there on Thanksgiving. So, maybe just in time for December, when those Christmas lights start going up, we'll have a little bit of relief with the weather. I mean, this week we're pretty warm. I mean, stepping outside this afternoon, I was kind of surprised how warm it felt. We were having all that sunshine in those mostly sunny skies. So again, any fronts that we get, we'll gladly take them, whether they're weak or strong.
Yeah, final point for me, because I know we're wrapping up soon. The biggest thing is I'll take the higher humidity right now just because of how dry it is. I will take my factor and say, hey, personally, I like it when it's drier, but our ground can't really take the dry air right now. We want some humidity. We want the dew points in the 60s. We want the dew points possibly even in the upper 50s and not even upper 60s to trap as much moisture in the ground as we can to limit our fire threat. If we keep getting more of these cold fronts with not rain and only bringing dry air that causes evaporation of our lakes, causes evaporation with our groundwaters. We're just coming off of one of the driest Aprils we ever had in Southwest Florida with the driest, the lowest the aquifer in not only Lehigh Acres, but Cape Coral has ever been in history. So the biggest thing is we want the fronts with rain, but in the meantime, I definitely want to enjoy the humidity because it is helping us out here in Southwest Florida. The more we get the dry air, the bigger problems I foresee us having in January, February, March, and even April.
Quite the delicate ecosystem that
yes,
we live
very
in.
much so. If you get dry for 2 months straight,
ways.
it's going to be an issue. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great point right there. I think we'll kind of touch a little bit on some of that fire danger risk coming up here in the next few days. Just kind of talk about it. Just because it hasn't rained doesn't mean that we're at a high risk for fire danger right now. A lot of because of that little bit of a moisture still trapped in our soil. So good stuff there. There's a lot to talk about the rest of this week. Remember, the most important thing tomorrow is going to be we get that fresh update from the Climate Prediction Center later on this afternoon, and we're going to show it to you here live at 11 a.m. tomorrow. That's Wednesday on Wink Tracks the Tropics. So for now, have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place. See you guys.